For as long as I can remember, I've always liked stories. And then, about 3 years ago, I thought to myself that in fact, I didn't only like them, but rather I was so enamored with them that I inherently linked myself to them, to the point that even people around me associated me with storytelling. Now, I believe that when someone leaves a mark in your life, they deserve to be told. And what better way is there of letting them know, if not by giving them a story of their own? The ink-created map, the mosaic lamp, the coffee bean, cinnamon, the paradox, Barcelona. And little by little, they started piling up. 50 stories, 150 pages and counting, creating a resume of my very own story through an unconventional description of its major characters. A description revolving around a symbol, for I think I have an eye for them, that I can find the fitting ones when they exist and create the perfect ones when they don't. You see, not once do I mention their names in these stories, for I believe that names are monodimensional, and too often they give people the impression of already knowing. You don't see it? Rossella, my roommate. Anna, my friend. Giulia, the girl in my French class. Maria. Who? But stories instead. Stories are a process of discovery. They're a door to something unknown. They're a way to break the wall that separates us from them. As I said, I like to believe that I have an eye for symbols. However, anyone could easily tell me, honey, there's no way you can compare a person to a mosaic lamp. What are you on? Meaning that this might well be an illusion that I decided to accept as a truth. For we often do this, believing something that is not necessarily true until it becomes true in its repercussions. Take friendship, for example. Why is it that when walking into this amphitheater, you decided to sit next to the person you're sitting with and not anyone else? What is it that makes you want to approach someone and befriend them? Or more precisely, what is it that dissuades you from doing so? What is the line between stranger and friend made of? Some of you here today might want to answer that there is fate behind the reason why you're friends with your friends and barely acknowledge, if not actively ignore, someone else. If you belong to that category of people, I hate to break it to you, but sociologically speaking, there are factors like propinquity and reciprocity, self-disclosure, and physical attractiveness that play a role in this process. You don't agree, do you? Well, neither did I. Or more precisely, I did not want to agree, because doing so made me feel as if my choices in interpersonal relationships, in friendship, and love were never actually choices. Or rather, they were choices that I made, not fully knowing why. And that drove me crazy, because it made me feel as if I did not control my own life. However, if there is something that I've learned, is that it's a matter of perspective. Have you ever heard of the expression Bidening? It's a popular culture expression coined by Fox's New Girl, used to describe the process of constantly trying to be in someone's close vicinity in order to facilitate, let's call it, close interaction. However, long before New Girl was even invented, Festinger, Schachler, and Bach came up with the theory of propinquity, the older and less fashionable sister of widening. My question today is, are we really that simple? Are we truly that predictable? Are we actually that lazy that we only choose to befriend those people that are always right there underneath our noses? These questions led me to wonder at how the lack of acknowledgement of social factors like propinquity and reciprocity and physical attractiveness actually affect us in how we go about our social interactions. Because I just could not wrap my head around it until it struck me. When I looked around, how many people would I have been able to write about? The answer was not many, unfortunately. But then, I asked myself a more important question. Of all these people that I was not able to write about, how many was I actually tempted to discover? And that, let me tell you, was a long answer. So in order to find some peace of mind, I decided to conduct a social experiment here at Sciences Po. Now, despite the experiment being very specific to Sciences Po, I believe that the ideas it is built on and the results it led to are of universal value, and they can be applied to anyone, anywhere, in their own environment. I sent out a survey with 3 questions. 2 multiple choice questions, asking people what made them want to approach someone and what dissuaded them from doing so. And 1 open-ended question, in which I asked people to describe themselves with 3 words. 74% of the people who took my survey declared that what made them want to approach someone was their perception of what they had in common with that person. When asked what dissuaded them from doing so, 39% stated that it was the feeling of not knowing how to approach someone. 36% instead stated that it was the feeling of being late because social groups had already been formed by then. See, last October, I took a trip to the Balkans with my best friends. And as we were walking through the streets of Mostar, we were having this really intense conversation about going to hostels alone. One of them says, "I could never do it. Could you?" Before I even had the time to answer, my other friend jumps in and says, "Are you kidding? You know that if she did that, she'd go up to strangers in the hostel and ask some weird random question like, 'Hey, what's your favorite movie?' Mine is The Godfather. Or, 'If you could go anywhere in the world right now, where would you go?' Now, I don't know how you would have reacted in that situation, but I was offended. I mean, they were mocking me. Or rather, they were mocking my tendency at initiating what they describe as random social interactions. And guess what? 33% of the people who took my survey would have probably joined them in their joke. Because I don't know if you knew, but apparently you cannot start a friendship out of nowhere because it's weird. My answer to that is, perché no? What is a random social interaction and what makes it weird? When you choose to watch a movie that you've never seen but intrigues you, is that weird? No, it's stimulating. When you choose to travel to a faraway destination that you've never been to but just inspires you, is that bizarre? No. It's adventurous. And when you decide to go to a restaurant and try a type of cuisine that you've never tasted, what you're curious about. Is that bizarre? No. Die. It's a sign of open-mindedness and versatility. But then why is trying to get to know someone that you have no connection with, but happen to be on the same path with, weird and random? To all those who said that they approach someone based on their conception of what they have in common with them, what would you say if I told you that there are factors that come into play in interpersonal relationships long before you can even get to that point? Factors that actually have the power of determining if you even ever do. Only 24% of people stated that physical attractiveness does play a role in the reason why they approach someone to befriend them. Now, Feingold wouldn't so much agree with these numbers, you see, because according to his experiments, people who are considered physically attractive are also associated with better social skills. And you see, that's the key, perception. Because no one cares if they actually have these social skills or not. That's not what's going to get them coffee. And it is these widely ignored factors, like Festinger's propinquity and Feingold's physical attractiveness theories, that, if acknowledged, could result in a radically different perspective on social interactions, friendship, and life. From the results of the last question of my survey, I identified 6 couples who appear to be similar enough to be compatible. Now, I've been warned to not use the term couples because otherwise someone might think I'm trying to steal Tinder's job. Not the case. I'm trying to build friendships. So I asked these people to get coffee and asked them a set of questions before and after their meeting. The 3 main points that emerged from this experiment were the role of expectations, surprise, and defiance. 2 of the pairs were in a fairly similar situation. They knew enough about each other to understand why they would result as compatible and to create expectations of what their meetings would be like. Both pairs were actually surprised after their meeting because they shared more than they thought they could have. But their reaction to this one fact were extremely different. While one pair expressed joyful surprise at having overcome the limits that they thought constrained them in this meeting, the other couple adopted a defiant and defensive attitude towards this entire project and identified the results as not valid and the exchange as not genuine because it came too easy. So clearly, no wall was torn down. But I'd say that some scraping of the surface did occur. And in the end, isn't that the first step? Think about it for 1 second. Imagine every person you do not cross on a regular basis, every person you do not share associations with, do not have classes with, and every person you do not find physically attractive disappeared. Poof. Ciao. There ain't much left, is there? Astonishing. And what is even more astonishing is that in real life, you eliminate these people from your friend radar without even knowing. And that's only saying that there's countless people that you don't even consider the possibility of building a social relationship with. But what about those who are on your friend radar and you just blatantly choose to ignore? How many people do you make small talk with on a weekly basis because maybe they have same classes as you, same associations, same atelier artistique, maybe they're in student accommodations just like you, and yet you've never actually sat down and had a real conversation with them? You've seen them, but you've never looked at them. You know of them, but you don't know them in the least. how many unwritten stories do you have? The point I'm trying to make is that if we just acknowledge our tendency of creating this wall between the few elects that we grow to consider as our people and everyone else, that wall might become a window. A window that allows you to see people as people and not decoration. To look at Menton in a way that it makes it look like New York City. And to look at things in a way that adds a little magic. My goal is not to change your mind. It's to change your perspective. My goal is to make you see how many unwritten stories are all around you every day, so that then, if you decide you want to, you can allow people around you to show you their symbol. There are 7.5 billion people on this earth. That's a lot of people. You can't befriend them all, and you don't have to. But I think that knowing that there's nothing making this distinction between us and them possible, nothing besides misconceptions and social phenomena that, if acknowledged, can be controlled, that makes the world look like a much bigger place. The Orchid of Ashes. A little less than a year ago, I went up to a girl that I thought I had barely anything in common with, and told her, "Ciao, andiamo a prenderci un caffè." She thought I was crazy. Weird, random, add to it. I don't care. But guess what? She agreed to get coffee anyways. And today, this girl is in the audience. And her story is among the ones that I'm most proud of. You see, I do not write for everyone I get coffee with. Nor do I start writing the minute that I think the wall has been torn down. No. No, I start writing when I know the wall has been torn down. And yet, I cannot help myself but climb over the debris and venture into the other side. But this point can never be acknowledged if the wall is not acknowledged. This point can never be reached if we do not uncover the wall. So when you walk out of this room today, you will have listened to much more expert speakers than me, luckily for you. And you will have 1,000 ideas dancing through your mind. But I truly hope that you will retain two things. One, uncovering that wall, discovering that symbol, starts with you. And two, never, ever, ever underestimate the power of a coffee.